let's not miss the market data that came out last week. Analyst firm Context has their European data for Q4. It's up 10.2% year on year. Here are the highlights. Notebooks grew 37% year on year in volume and 31% in revenue in Q4. For the year, up 7.2%. Countries showing the biggest growth: Poland, 30% increase in Q4, the Czech Republic at 15%, Spain 13%, and Italy 11%. France, Austria, and Slovakia all down, 2, 5, and 7%. Small and medium-sized resellers dominated, 36.5% of the market. Large enterprise resellers down 2% at 26.4%. Retail and e-tail were the rest of the market. And while I'm internationally focused, TGT Consult, which is ISG's consulting arm, says Brazilian companies are having growing importance in enterprise IT. In Brazil, local firms are nearly half of the market, and those companies are growing significantly in public cloud, managed services, and transformation. So why do we care? Local is the name of the game. What I took more than anything from this was how a local market can engage with its own providers. Anytime I worry too much about the so-called consolidation, I'm reminded of this magic. That's my big reason to care. And for those listeners in those markets, this is specific to you. This isn't just a US-focused show after all, as there are lessons for everyone in any market. Honeywell has a new study about returning to the office. 71% do not feel completely safe in the building. For remote workers, it's higher at 82%. Importantly, 29% of remote workers said they would look for another job rather than return to a building that did not implement safety measures. So why do we care? The context of this is Commercial Integrator, which focuses on technology of buildings like conference rooms and electronics. There's good data to dig into here if you want to go further. The data is not just US. The UK, Germany, and Middle East are included. 2 reasons to care. You have to consider what changes you are making to ensure your team feels safe returning to the office, particularly if you haven't. Then you need to know that if you rush it, you will lose staff. The data clearly says both. That's why we care. There's technology opportunity here to be sure, and if you're capable, go mind that. Everyone else cares about those 2 lessons regardless. I talk a lot about regulation on the show, and I bemoan the question of who will represent us, particularly when we think about the small or mid-sized services provider. Axios profiled the Internet Association, Silicon Valley's lobbying organization. Its biggest challenge is too many firms working at cross purposes. The big companies, Facebook, Google, and Amazon, just have different needs from the smaller members. Plus, they have a leadership vacuum, a funds problem, and members not as well engaged. Now, why do we care? IA feels like it could be part of the solution, at least more than CompTIA have withdrawn from lobbying pretty much entirely. Providers still need to find a place to get involved. This is a conversation too. Speak up if you have ones to look at. I was dismissive of CES last week, and I stand by that. For a big trend show, not a lot to latch on to. I do want to highlight the new Worst in Show awards given by the Repair Association. Who's that? They're a group pushing for right to repair to be the law of the land. Here, they're interested in products that are the least secure, safe, and repairable. John Deere wins for repairability. Their new combine removes an industry-standard header with a proprietary digital one, a first in agricultural history. How about Linksys for privacy? They win for their creepy move on a Wi-Fi detector to detect motion using every device in your house as a tracker. There were 6 winners in total. Why do we care? Here's the downside to technology. We often forget the intentional or unintentional downsides. I pulled one of each. John Deere made a decision to make their equipment proprietary. The second feels a little bit more accidental. The decision is more of an outcome rather than the intention. First is the realm of product designers. My take, there's a lot more to win in ecosystems. The second is the realm of consultants. You can make a lot of money making recommendations based around unintended consequences. Auvik Networks has released their 2021 Network Field Report. Some highlights. Only 36% of organizations back up their network device configurations daily or weekly. Think that's enough? The data says configuration changes are frequent. How's this for a bummer? More than half of an IT pro's time are spent on projects they hate or tolerate. Why the hate? Not enough time. More than a quarter of organizations never or rarely update their network documentation. Again, the data says changes happen all the time. Half of IT pros don't have complete information on their network configurations. So why do we care? I like this survey due to its closeness to the provider community. I'm also amused it's full of obvious results. Of course, no one knows enough about their network. There's an obvious connection here between the fact Auvik sells a product that solves this problem and that so many aren't doing enough of. Duh, they highlight it with the implication you should buy their stuff. Doesn't mean the problem isn't real. I don't think the real money is in network management. It's a necessary foundation to do the really profitable stuff. Just that the really profitable assumes you're doing this well and systemized enough to not have to put expensive labor on it. The FBI has filed an affidavit charging one of the Capitol rioters with unlawful entry to the Capitol and impeding government functions, and includes an apparent plan to steal Nancy Pelosi's laptop and convey it to a contact in Russia. The plan is detailed in the filing, where a former associate of the rioter told police of the plan to steal the laptop with the intent to sell it to the Russian government. Why do we care? Right after the riots at the Capitol, I highlighted the cybersecurity risk that was theoretical. That got real very fast. We blasted past theory and passed right by opportunistic to fully planned. Think that through. A rioter planned to steal secure documents and sell them to the Russians, under cover of the riots. Now realize this could happen to any of your customers or you or anything you manage too. If you lose physical security, it's all over. The criminals are always way more organized than you expect them to be. A new study has found that heart rate variability, as detected by smartwatches and wearables, can be used to detect COVID-19. Detection is before the virus can be found by tests or symptoms. 81% of coronavirus positive patients had changes in their resting heart rates up to 9.5 days prior to the onset of symptoms. Why do we care? I love this so much. This is the promise of the Internet of Things and smart devices, right here. Something useful you couldn't predict before and now you can. Sure, this is a consumer example. It just shows how putting sensors on those things can open up new opportunities. Make sure you're sitting at the table, having the conversations about offerings, about what kind of data collection is possible and what's useful, and pair with the business experts so they can know they can leverage it. In the battle to combat misinformation online, there's now research. In the week after President Trump was suspended, research from Signal Labs found a 73% drop in misinformation regarding election fraud. Other stats: hashtag Fight for Trump dropped 95%, hashtag Hold the Line and March for Trump dropped 95%. And a similar study back in October showed just 20 accounts, including Trump's, were responsible for a fifth of misinformation about voting and mail-in ballots. Why do we care? So much for the statement that social media can't influence what's spread on their platform. They just didn't want to. What's interesting to me is that it's so specific. Remove a select few and disinformation changes dramatically. I'll keep saying it. These are private companies making changes on their platforms. In the US, the First Amendment protects citizens from the government. You're also not ever protected from consequences. Why we care is that we consider data management in general, and it doesn't take much to get a data set spoiled. That's your value in helping customers manage their data. Yesterday, Joe Biden was sworn in as the 46th President of the United States. Let's hit a couple of important notes here. The Biden administration is calling for $15 billion in grants to small businesses. This is a new program, not an extension of PPP. The plan also calls for $35 billion in financing programs for loans and capital for entrepreneurs. Also on deck, potential changes to PPP, including better oversight and a guarantee that every eligible business with 50 employees or fewer gets relief. Why do we care? New administration, new approach to regulation. My 2021 prediction is that the first half of the year is rough. One effect of that will be new programs to take advantage of. If your goal is survival, you take every lifeline thrown your way. Expect the administration to move fast. They've set a pretty bold tone already, 17 executive orders on day one, so expect more. Pay attention, that's why we care. There will be programs to stimulate growth. Let's follow up to last week's discussion about Microsoft going direct. If you missed it, several providers sounded the alarm about emails to customers soliciting Microsoft services directly. Turns out there is a new program at Microsoft. The company is using the idea of licensing audits, where you review the current licensing needs to seek opportunities. The program was designed to include partners, and the incidents reported last week were an overzealous sales consultant whose leadership has corrected the incident after the feedback. The way the program is designed, Microsoft should be calling businesses and including the partner in the comms, if they can find one, and will offer to look at licensing usage, security, and upgrade planning for Microsoft 365 and Azure at no cost. This report can be co-branded with the partner. So why do we care? The blog in question here is a good read for an all-around, on-the-ground perspective. My take: call out your vendor when they make a move you dislike. Then recognize it may have been a legitimate mistake. This one was. Partnership doesn't mean everything is always perfect. It just means you work together in good times and in bad. Then, don't be surprised. Vendors have sales goals to meet too. In down times, they are more aggressive, and we're in down times. Be shocked when they violate an agreement. Just don't be surprised. Here's your scary new trend. Sophos is reporting that ransomware code is being shared across so-called code families. Some ransomware groups are even appearing to work in concert rather than competition with each other. Sophos says this may be the future of ransomware. Ransomware families using a common toolset, making it harder to detect. Canalys says this should be a good year for security. 10% increase in spending worldwide, 12.5% in web and email security, 11% in vulnerability and security analytics, and 10.4% in endpoint security. Now, why do we care? Here's my theme lately. Spending is up, but the problem doesn't feel like it's getting better. That's why I paired these two stories together. Sure, spending may go up, but our results? Those providers that do deliver results here are going to stand out. It shouldn't be a high bar to clear sometimes. Usually the breaches are because of oversight. Breaches like SolarWinds are the exception, not the rule. Yesterday, Paul Dipple at Service Leadership presented new market data on managed service provider financials. On a webinar hosted by Channel EDE, here's some data that jumped out at me. SLI has launched a new risk and progress matrix. This balances a provider's financial strength against their trajectory. In Q3, 17.5% of providers are both in a least safe position financially and not making progress. A mirror, 17.7% are both in a strong position and making great progress. In broader view, about 32% of providers are not making progress financially, regardless of cash position. Here's the other detail. There's a K-shaped recovery happening for providers. The best in class are pulling ahead, and the bottom quartile are falling behind. Why do we care? Longtime listeners know I'll be sprinkling this data like seasoning across my thinking, so look for more to come. Pre-pandemic, Forrester said 25% of providers were breaking even or losing money. Now, 32% just not making progress financially, and the bottom getting worse. My observation, and Paul's too, was that this recession is not behaving like previous ones. Be deliberate. Understand your market, industry, geography, and customer base, and build your plan. I saved up the SolarWinds stories. A fourth malware was found in the incident. Called Raindrop, it's used after Sunspot, Sunburst, and Teardrop. It's used very rarely and has been only found 4 times and can be used in place of Teardrop. Investigators are still unraveling all the differences between the two, but noted one key difference is a different deployment method, and the files hid as a 7-zip file. Malwarebytes is reporting they too were breached by the same hacking group, just not the same vector. They don't use SolarWinds Orion. Instead, they were breached via an email protection product, and the hackers gained access to some internal company emails. Microsoft is sharing how the hackers evaded detection. They were skilled operators. They hid their tools and binaries with matching files and programs on the compromised device. They built firewall rules to minimize noise before running network scans. They moved carefully around, disabling security on targeted hosts before they moved. They disabled event logging before hands-on keyboard activity, and then they put it back when they were done. Microsoft is also reporting about 4 distinct techniques used to bypass identity and access management protections to move from on-prem to cloud Microsoft 365 accounts. How big is the damage? The financial impact is still coming out, but insured losses now total $90 million and climbing. Some analysts even say it could have been far worse. The incident is changing Congress's approach to cybersecurity. The Biden administration has indicated that this is a top priority, calling for $10 billion in spending, and a chunk of that for the CISA. Incoming chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Mark Warner, is planning to hold hearings and will look at a national mandatory data breach notification law. Finally, a warning in Wired. They say the copycats are coming. So why do we care? Learning the details matter because of that last insight. We all need to get smarter about the risks and the strategies, because this is coming for us. Before leaving, former FCC Chairman Ajit Pai sent out his annual broadband report. His take? 3 meg upload and 25 meg download is good enough for Americans. That standard? It's 6 years old. The former chairman also concludes that the rural-urban divide is rapidly closing. The evidence? The gap between the two is now just 16% at the end of 2019, down from 30 points at the end of 2016. Incoming Chair Jessica Rosenworcel is focused on ensuring students have access to broadband. She's the one who coined the term homework gap. Here's a twist. Verizon, in a policy paper out today, urges making the new emergency broadband benefit permanent. So why do we care? Critics are saying these victory laps aren't backed up by the data, and I'm right there with them. I don't mind saying I'm very pro-broadband as a utility. It seems Verizon knows it too. At a minimum, of course they like being supported by public funds to help with these costs. I'm not so totally cynical here, though. That spend should open up real possibilities for new markets, so providers should want students connected. Thanks for watching the video edition of the Business of Tech podcast. If you like the show, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. You'll get new episodes every week, as well as our editorial and interview content. If you want to support directly, you can also subscribe on Patreon at patreon.com/MSPRadio. You get early access to content and able to give me feedback and interact with questions. Additionally, you can catch all these stories every day on the Business of Tech podcast, available on all the podcatchers or online in written form at businessof.tech. Thanks for listening.